welcome back to another episode of KSP POV, where we play Kerbal Space Program in first person. Today we've got two separate tasks, as you can tell by the name of the title. We are going to be doing some tourist contracts, as well as testing out a craft for the next episode's mission. So first off, kind of as usual, we go and we look through the contracts to see if there's anything that we can take, and I see down here that we have two tourist missions that can pay us pretty decently, considering that all they need to do is get to low carbon orbit. So the very first one is our typical tourist missions with Tito Kerman being launched up into space, and then we have a secondary tourist who also wants to be launched into space. So we go ahead and we take these Mach 1 lander cans that we still have yet to do the contract for. We're supposed to test those in low carbon orbit, and we are not going to do that as well during this mission because, you know, it's just too useful to have the lander can right now, and we haven't unlocked it. So we're just going to try to get as much use out of it as possible before either the contract expires or we're just kind of forced to do it. So yeah, so this is essentially the craft. I put those little solid rocket boosters on there as a way of like emergency descent, but I decided to go for some RCS thrusters just in case to, you know, make use out of the monopropellant that's in the cabin just naturally. And then of course the most important part, we put lights on the craft, and we make sure that they're blinking and colored because that is going to keep us flying straight, and it's going to keep our orbit. Sorry, I couldn't even do it. So yeah, so we get our action groups set up. Just trying to figure out the best way to keep our Kerbal safe. The large radiators are definitely going to help. And then once again, we just use the cryogenic fuel tanks with the Pila engine because that is basically going to be our lifter for now, at least until we start doing bigger missions. I mean, even still with bigger missions, the Pila is just a great engine. You know, I would say that its equivalent is the Mammoth engine, but I still think that the Pila is better than the Mammoth. So we go ahead and put our camera on there because we are going to be piloting in first person as per usual with this series, and it's nice to have just a little bit of a visual of what's going on outside. So now this first tourist contract, I'm going to basically show kind of all of it. I'm going to cut through some small parts just to keep time in mind. But, oh, this is funny. The tourists aren't allowed to click on any of the monitors. They're not allowed to touch any buttons. I was just going to put on some information for them to look at, but apparently even looking at the information is off limits. And so yeah, so we go ahead and we have a pretty good takeoff. You know, pretty solid. Once we get the appropriate engines with good gimbaling and good thrust to weight ratio, takeoffs start becoming very routine, very monotonous, and so there's going to be some times where I just skip ahead and just try to you know, summarize how the launch went. You know, there's the separation, the fact that there was no problem with the separation. Taking a look through the tourists through their eyes, see how the ascent's going from their little capsule. Yep, I'm dealing with some high G forces, so I decided to calm down the throttle a little bit. I think I'm only going at like 50% thrust. I go ahead and I check the contract to see how high I need to be, and I just need to be above 75,000. So I bring myself to 90 just to be a little bit safe with our orbit and not be skimming the top of the surface as we're trying to circularize. And I'm just going to get myself into position. I'm not going to be using the remote tech flight computer on this one. Don't know why, I just chose not to. Although it's probably for the best because in the following episode we used the flight computer pretty disastrously. It fails us more than once, so maybe I just kind of had some foreshadowing in my own mind of, well, you know, these are tourists and I don't want to kill them, so let's not take any chances and we'll just we'll do the burn ourselves. It is Dilpon Kerman that is flying here, and so being a 2-star pilot, he should be able to handle anything we throw at him. And we're circularized. So we go ahead and we deploy our solar panels and we turn on the flashy blinky lights. Most important part of any tourist contract is keeping the tourists happy, and what better way than flashing blinky lights? So we go ahead and turn off the overhead light now that we're in space. Save a little energy where we can. And we're just killing some time because the contract requires them to be, well, one of the contracts requires them to be up in space for 5 hours, and the other contract doesn't require any time. So all we have to do is wait a little bit and then bring everybody home, and that is money in the bag. That is easy contracts. We're going to be doing quite a few space tourist contracts. Unless they're super interesting, we might end up just doing them off camera because it's going to be a lot of this, basically. You know, bring a tourist up to low carbon orbit and then just wait a little bit and then bring them safely back home. We might do, we'll show contracts like, you know, do a lunar flyby or having them land somewhere, but something like this where it's just bring them to LKO, probably skip through. Right here, I noticed that we're just above our grasslands science base where we can crash our lower stage booster into the ground and hopefully collect some science from that. So I go ahead and just use the last of my fuel. There you go, kick it off. And then I take, because I'm done, we're ready to come home. I just use the remaining bits of my fuel in this stage, which is, you know, all of the fuel, and I try to get myself just a bit better of a descent. I was coming down way too hard, having dropped the booster off. I was trying to get it as close as possible to the science base, so I was heading basically straight down, and that's going to be too rough of a re-entry, so I'm just using my fuel to kind of circularize. It's almost like coming back into orbit, but really all I'm doing is just trying to get my periapsis to about 40,000, so I know that I have a good angle of approach, angle of attack, as they say. We are all good. We are ready to come home. Pretty, like I said, pretty easy contract. So we go ahead and we stage off our boosters and we hit our descent button. So our radiators are now active, our solar panels are deployed, or retracted, and the parachute, most importantly, the parachute is armed. So yeah, so there's really nothing left to do but except point retrograde and time warp until we get to the point where we re-enter the atmosphere. and then hopefully be able to control it on the way down and land safely. Yeah, so go ahead and time warp until we hit the atmosphere, because we're high up, relatively speaking. In space, there is no high, there is no up. It's just relative. So I'm pretty confident that our heat shield and our radiators are going to be able to handle the re-entry. So I go ahead and time warp, or physics warp ×4, to just speed up the time that it takes to come through the atmosphere and then land. And our ground proximity warning is going off, just letting us know that we are on a collision course. And it's usually around 25 to 21 kilometers is when the flames usually cut out. When it lasts longer than that, that's when you need to start worrying. If you're still on fire down at like 17 kilometers, 15 kilometers, 10 kilometers, that's bad. You might need to do some drastic measures at that point. But all in all, we stopped being on fire around 24 kilometers, so everything was good. This craft is rated and ready for tourist contracts. That's why it's called the Tourist Trap V1. Yep. So with a safe and successful landing, check the contracts, and I go ahead and I call the recovery team. And yeah, we had 2 contracts completed by that, so that was a hefty amount of money that we just got. And so now I decided to pick up one more contract, which is basically the same thing, except it's 2 Kerbals in 1 contract. Just low Kerbal orbit, stay there for about 5 hours, and then come back. So like I said, I'm just going to kind of blow through this and just show you some of the choice parts of the mission. Because I want to let you know that I'm still doing things. I don't want to just be like, oh yeah, I made $500,000 off camera. Don't worry about how. I'm going to show you that we are working for every dollar, every scrap of reputation that we get. Nice, safe and easy touchdown. Just another contract completed. And with that, oh yeah, look how far. Pretty close to the KSC. That's nice. But with that will be the end of the tourist aspects of today's episode. And now we are going to get into the testing. So the next major contract that we're going to be working on, and it's going to be the subject of the following episode, is it's twofold. One, we are going to try to land this rover on the Mun. And then secondly, we're going to try to bring back the probe that dropped it off. So this little probe that I'm making right here. Because we had a contract a while ago to land a probe on the moon. But we didn't realize that one of the aspects of it is that we had to bring it back home. And it wasn't able to come back home. And so the first 2 parts of the contract are completed, but the last part, the bring it home, wasn't. So determined to finish it, we didn't want to fail it, we decided to do both missions at once. So we will send a probe out there to deliver the rover, but we will also be taking it back, which is why the final delivery is just that small piece of the mainframe, the brain, why can't I think of the word? The probe control. It's just a probe control, heat shield, reaction wheel to keep it stabilized, and a battery to keep it charged while it comes back to Kerbal. So right now we are going to just do a simulation. We're going to test to see if landing it on the Mun, first off, if those 4 those 4 engines can handle landing on the Mun. And then secondly, more importantly, is whether or not the detachment system will work. If we can safely drop the rover to the surface without destroying it or destroying the probe itself to bring it back. The reason why we need a rover on the Mun is because we have a contract to scan Munstone. So this is the Busy Bee, the Busy Bee 3, the next generation of that rover that we used a couple episodes back to scan for the Baobab. The scanning of the Baobab on the surface of Kerbal was like its test run. This is ultimately what it was going to be designed to do, is rove around the Mun. So our deployment system is less than optimal. So I tried to jettison away from the rover, but overall it doesn't seem like it's a good feasible option right there, because I'm pretty sure as soon as I hit the ground I was going to smash everything apart on that rover. So we go back to the drawing board and realize maybe dropping it from the top might not be the best idea. And then right there I had the best idea that I've had in KSP in a very, very long time. And that is to put a reaction wheel on the bottom of the rover. I will not realize just how good of an idea that was until I get the test going where I try to deploy it onto the Mun, and I realized that by putting a reaction wheel on the bottom of the rover, it gives you in low gravity places such as the Mun, it gives you the ability to control it from there. And even though I'm pointed straight up, I will be able to have the control to land myself on all 4 wheels. Not only that, but I will be able to right myself if I flip over, because the control of the reaction wheel is strong enough on the Mun, and definitely most likely on Midness as well. My Aero Forces was showing that it was pointing towards the left, and so I just rotate the top capsule so that way now my angle is pointing eastward. So that'll just, if anything else, it'll just assist us in our gravity turn, as opposed to pointed to the side and making us veer off. And that's solely because the rover is off balance, so it's not perfectly symmetrical, which is why we have that arrow is pointed. So yeah, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to once again test in orbit of the Mun. I dropped my fuel down to basically about half to simulate how much fuel I'd probably have in this stage. I'm pretty excited that even with the half amount of fuel, I was able to come out of orbit and land without wasting too much. And the landing gear leaves a little bit to be desired. It's still a little top heavy, but look at this separation. So I kept it in its fairing just in case, to keep it protected. I guess I didn't need to do that, but definitely need the fairing for takeoff. But I guess I don't necessarily need it for landing here, but I'm going to keep it anyway. But yeah, look at this. You see how much control I have with that? Spin all over, but then all I got to do is turn off the SAS when I'm ready, and I have full control over Rover again. And if I ever need to flip it, I just need to turn that SAS back on. So that was a successful test. Now I know that this rocket itself will be able to deliver the vehicle. I know that the vehicle will be able to be safely brought back down to the surface, and it will be able to it'll be able to start its mission from there. So I go ahead and I change the battery out for just a bigger one, and at the last minute I decided to put some mystery goo on, see if we can get a little science from the surface. And since this is the only probe that we've been able to, or have the plan to be able to bring back. We haven't done any mystery goo science experiments anywhere because we'd rather not take a dive in the amount of science just to transmit it. So setting up my action groups, I needed to make sure that the parachute was staged for the descent. Then I decided to throw on some radiators just for extra measure. But that is going to be the end of this episode. In the next episode, which should be coming very shortly because it's already been filmed and edited and everything, we will be launching this. We will be making our probe mission to the Mun, and we're also going to be doing the Rover's mission. So I hope you are looking forward to that. Stay tuned. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, please give me a like, and I will see you again next time. Take care.